So welcome everyone to the November 10th meeting of the SVU ESD. This is Chris Murphy, the chair, and I am looking around. Do we have either Tammy or Scott on the line anywhere?
I'm here on the phone.
Gotcha, 7915, very good. Okay, so we're just missing Scott. So first of all, I'm going to give the rundown of who I see here for the purposes of the minutes. And then I think I'll be able to get everyone. So we have Superintendent Jim Culkeen. We have Assistant Superintendent Laura Boudreau. There's myself, Chris Murphy. We have Dick France, Chael Sikora. We have Cindy Brownell. We have Jeff Leake, Richard Bump taking minutes. We have Renee Gordon, who was muted. We have the fine folks at Catamount TV. We got Jerry Prue on the line. We have Susan Hogue, and we have Tammy Sewell. So anyone else out there that is present on this meeting that I have not identified?
I'm not seeing them, Chris.
Okay, very good. Thanks so much.
Tammy's
So our
in right now, so I just let her in.
okay. So our first item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone please stand and direct your attention to the flag behind Superintendent Culkeen. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America,
and the republic
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty and
liberty
justice
and
for all.
justice for all.
Right, very good. Their next item of business is public comment, but not seeing anyone here from the public. I think we can skip past that. Our consent agenda is likewise very brief. The only item to approve the consent agenda are the minutes. Richard emailed those out, and then he really emailed those out in an email following that. So are there any recommended or suggested modifications to those minutes as published? Yes, Dick.
Just a question. We talked about the statement, the equity statement that was put out. From the time between last time and this time, have we decided how we're going to actually sign things? I mean, Shayla and I stood in support of the thing, but there's no real signatures on there from board members. How did that end up?
I don't think there is a resolution yet. I think, I mean, my preference would be actual pen to paper when the time comes. I mean, I think we as a board voted to support it. And I think there is meaning in putting an actual ink on actual paper for this kind of thing, instead of just the electronic signatures that we've been able to do for our warrants and such. So I think we've made the intentions of the board clear, and I think we can be patient for the time to actually sign that. In the meantime, the steps indicated by that equity statement are being put into action, and that's the most important part.
Thank you. Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a first and second. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda as published, please signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so the motion passes. The consent agenda is accepted. All right, agenda item number 4. I'll turn the floor over to Director Gordon, please, for an update on the finances, please.
On the spot, Chris. You have the treasurer's report there.
Yes.
That would just be the board moving to accept that as presented.
Move to approve the treasurer's report.
Second.
October 20.
Any questions about the treasurer's report?
No.
So hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the treasurer's report as published, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, very good. And the motion passes. And next, there's the Hannaford Helps program. Director Gordon, are you able to speak to that at all, about kind of the origin of that, or where that comes from? I mean, from Hannaford, obviously, but
yeah,
how did it come about?
Those of you, I think various manufacturers and or stores offer certain rewards programs. So Molly Stark, working with Hannaford, set up this program to support their schools. So through purchasing, they were able to earn a couple of checks, I think totaling $477, that for Principal Basic is asking if they can actually have have the board accept on behalf of the school. They would like to put that in their student activities fund and support PBIS reward systems.
And to the best of your knowledge, are there any limitations from Hannaford as to how that money can be spent?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. All right, there,
I have a question, Chris.
please.
How does the outlining school districts apply for the Hannaford Help School program?
It's open to any school. All they have to do is register.
Molly Stock is not the only one, Renee, right? We have multiple schools that have done this.
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to like, you know, the box tops programs, like where you actually used to have to clip them and turn them into schools. So I think this is just another program similar to that, you know, the schools tend to kind of just pick up and run with to support their kind of internal programs.
Okay, thank you.
Move to approve to accept the Hannaford Helps Program funds to the general account. General
Second.
activities account, I should say.
So we have a first and a second. Any further discussion on accepting the 477? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the Hannaford Helps Program's money, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good. And that passes as well. So
Thank you.
our thanks to Hannaford. Yes, Director Gordon?
Oh, I was just saying thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. So that moves us on to agenda item 5, which is the superintendent's report. So Superintendent Culkeen, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. And I am honored to have both my assistant superintendent and my director of finance and operations here tonight. So we should be able to answer whatever questions you have as we move forward through the most unusual school opening that I have ever experienced. Couple of new points I want to let you know that, you know, the Agency of Education has decided, as of an email that we received at like 5:30 last night, that they're going to offer testing, COVID testing for staff. And that's going to begin next week. So our biggest scramble of today has been figuring out how that happens. I was on a webinar for a good part of the afternoon with the Vermont Superintendents Association on how this would begin, and started this morning with the Southwest Vermont Superintendents, again, how we're going to do this testing. My understanding, we're going to be receiving kits that are self-testing for COVID, because our COVID-19 coordinator, Ashley Walker, and school nurses were a little concerned about capacity for testing. They won't be doing the testing. People will do their own testing, put in a kit that then we collect and then we ship off. The state's paying for the testing. We pay for the shipping. It's voluntary by school. It's voluntary by school district. It's voluntary by staff. No one has to be tested, but it will be available. Sitting here Wednesday evening, I do not know yet what day next week will be the day that we will be tested. All I know is that I told them we needed to opt out on Wednesdays because we would not have most staff in the building on Wednesday for doing this testing. After next week, after any staff that volunteers to be testing, then 25% of the staff of Vermont schools will be tested 1 week during the month of December. And where this database goes from there, I'm not sure. So a lot of superintendents I'm talking to are very glad that this is happening, but at the same time frustrated with the timeline and the pressure to get this done. I'm told the Vermont National Guard will be distributing the tests next week, and then we will ship the test kits, the swab test kits, back to the state of Vermont via UPS. So I don't have much more than that to tell you, because literally it came to us last night and then all unraveled today, but I will update you in my emails about what this will look like. My understanding is the next thing that will happen, now that we've indicated we want to participate, is I will get some form from the state that we will send out to staff who would like to be tested. And then we'll get the amount of kits back for how many have indicated they want to be tested next week. They asked us for our patience as they try to unravel this. It's, you know, it's a positive step, but it's the logistics of it could be difficult. Shaftesbury Elementary School, I have Renee here, so this is great tonight that we could have where we are with the ventilation project there and in Pownell. As I told you in my email, Shaftesbury will be completed by the deadline. Pownell probably 75% by the deadline. There is no ventilation projects online for Woodford. There'll be standalone ventilation units and the Bennington, all three Bennington schools, because of the project that they did, they already met guidance for ventilation in their buildings. So by January 1, we should be in good shape with building ventilation. Shaftesbury, the foresight that they showed and did their project, you know, in the past 2 years, there wasn't as much work to be done. Pownell will, as I said, should be 75% complete by the deadline, but we're committed to doing the other 25% as the funding, you know, we may lose the funding, but our share of what the project is going to cost, we'll be able to pay for what goes after those deadlines. I'm going to stop for a minute since I have Renee here. Renee, anything on either one of those ventilation projects you want to add for the board that I may have missed?
Nothing that you missed, but just in talking with Jay and Jeff today, Hayden is actually just slightly ahead of schedule at Shaftesbury. So they are moving to the other portion of their building tomorrow, and possible that they may actually finish up prior to next Friday. So they
projected date was the 20th that they would complete, so they could be ahead of that.
Slightly, yes.
Good.
And I don't know, did we ever, I apologize because I don't know the day and month that we're in.
You got me nervous, so go ahead.
No, just did we ever circle back to the board to let them know that the difference in the awards from Efficiency Vermont and the grant awards?
Well, to be sure, why don't you review it then?
So we had originally, I think the last time we met, we had asked the board to approve us spending funds that we have in reserve, because Efficiency Vermont had only awarded us $125,000 towards the project in Pownell. They have since upped that to 75% of the overall project award. So I'm sorry, I was just trying to pull it up here. I think it's in excess of $250,000 that they're giving us. So it was a substantial shift in the funds that they had actually, the legislature had shifted more of the CRF money into the HVAC grant application system through Efficiency Vermont. So they gave us more money.
Yeah. And there's a possibility even additional money, that a third round of funding, but that would be more, have more of an impact on what MAU is, because they're behind the elementary on district on some of these funding issues. Dick France had a question.
Just that Woodford has a reserve account, and I don't recall the figure right off the top, but if we chose to put that money into this effort, if we could complete the job, I presume that would be okay with this board and the administration. But if, I guess, can we put the idea forward if I can find out how much it is, and
so
put that toward that?
Renee, they haven't done, what did Efficiency Vermont give for a price figure Vermont for Woodford? It was approaching $300,000, wasn't it, for a ventilation project?
Something like that, and we don't have that. No.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So the Woodford is getting the standalone air filtration units as a stopgap effort to, and we're committed to, if we need to buy more, we will buy more. But for right now, so even though Woodford Elementary is air conditioned, which was necessitated by the fact of how close it is to Route 9, truck traffic, all of that issue. So they can shut their windows in warmer weather and run the air conditioning. They are more mini split units, which then doesn't provide any type of ventilation that would be like an essential air conditioning system. So they don't have the ventilation in the building as they have air conditioning. So that's why the filtration units went there. And then it's, this board's going to have to decide, do you want to spend $300,000 on Woodford Elementary, if that's what the estimate is. But that, Renee, correct me if I'm wrong, that estimate came from the engineering firm that did the first survey, and Hayden hasn't looked at Woodford for us yet, have they?
That is correct. That was from EEI's original assessment of the buildings back in July, I believe.
So we would probably be better served if we had a local contractor like Hayden when they, so the ventilation units is our temporary cure for the ventilation issue at Woodford, but we could have them look at that building because they never had, and what would it take to put a ventilation system in? Maybe it'd be less than 300,000. We don't know.
I'm not sure that would be a priority at this point. I just threw it out there, and Woodford is tough enough so we can open our windows in January anyway.
It's the truck noise, Dick, coming down, Jay
Yeah, I
breaking
know.
down the mountain.
Dick, did you have a specific project in mind or specific remediation steps you were thinking about?
No, I almost never have anything specific in my mind, Chris, just throwing it out there.
So we'll make sure, Renee and I will make sure that we pursue that. We let, Hayden, they're doing phenomenal work for us, that they're able to get this done by the spending deadline. I'm so pleased that they're going to be able to do Pownell by, 75% of Pownell by the deadline, and they are going to be able to get Shaftesbury done and Congress Street for MAU. Why don't we, Renee and I will make a note that we'll revisit that once they get the bulk of this work done, because Woodford's never going to qualify for the funding from the state or federal government, but what do they have in their reserve fund? What do we have in the new Union Elementary District reserve fund that maybe we can do event? We'll ask when this huge cloud by December 30th expires, and maybe Hayden can catch their breath. We could have them look at what that building, what could happen there.
It's not an issue to worry about at this time.
Okay.
And I was able to pull up the grant award as we were speaking. So across all of our campuses, the total award amount, for the record, Richard, is $345,000, $280.56. And what that's covering is the ventilation project in its entirety at Shaftesbury. We have the standalone air purifier units at Woodford. We also have air purifier units for the isolation rooms at the other elementary schools, as well as upgrades to the MERV 13 filters. And then the award for Pownell is, actually, I was mistaken, it's just under $250,000. It's $248,196 towards the $330,000 project.
So that is really, good news. And thank you to Renee and her staff for pursuing that. And I can't thank the principals enough for the flexibility. You saw that in my email to you that, it didn't quite work out for Shaftesbury because it was specific to one wing. So they needed to go remote for the students that were in that wing, which then turned out to be a blessing because of the COVID outbreak we had in that part of the building. But Pownell is going to be able to remain, the students will be able to remain in building because of the flexing of classrooms that Principal Todd Phillips designed along with his teaching staff. So their cooperation, Todd, Jeff, Kevin, and Jay have just been phenomenal. And you should know that as a board, that their commitment to getting this work done, I can't thank them enough. And also to Jerry Prue and the flexibility of his crew, we have had some cleaning issues up in Shaftesbury because of crew members, staff members who aren't available because they need to quarantine, and we've been able to flex, even though we're two different school districts. We've had a lot of assistance from MAU maintenance staff to go and clean and help assist clean and disinfect Shaftesbury Elementary School because they just didn't have the staff available. And I can't thank them enough, and Tony, for the flexibility that they have shown, the all-in spirit that we're all in this together. It's been encouraging for me that they're all working together. And as board, you should know that we have employees from the other school district in the SU shifting their responsibilities to help us all get through this. And thank you to Renee for also orchestrating that to do. So Renee, and we probably wouldn't, we could have been at the point that we may have had to shut down Shaftesbury Elementary School because we weren't able to get it cleaned and disinfected in time. But we were able to use staff from MAU to do that.
Do we have a timeline for when all the standalone units are going to be received for Pownell? Or for Woodford, rather. Sorry, for Woodford.
Renee, we have them all on site, correct?
Yes, yes, they all arrived over a month ago, I think. So they're all operational. Yep.
So they are, okay. Okay. I thought had all been deployed, but okay, good.
Well, it was, and again, to Amanda and Renee's staff, I have to commend her for being diligent with vendors who do things such as print UPS shipping labels indicating that, oh, so you would think that it's been shipped, but all that meant is they printed a label and the product wasn't actually shipped. It might have been still sitting on a loading dock in California. So dogged pursuit for these ventilation units that it seems every school in the country is trying to get, and that we did get them here a little later than what we wanted, but they are here. And the other, we had the COVID outbreak at Shaftesbury Elementary, and as I told you on the email, that the staff has all been cleared to return those students that still needed to quarantine, which was a small percentage of the population, because they were already working remotely, because that part of the building was not usable because the ventilation project was going there. They're already remote learning, so it didn't impact that. So impact, while was concerning, was not as difficult to deal with as possible. So I commend Jeff Johnson and his staff. And also our COVID-19 coordinator is a person by the name of Ashley Walker. You may not know her. She is our lead nurse, but she is stationed out of Mount Anthony Union Middle School. So she's a Mount Anthony employee. We stipend her to be our COVID-19 coordinator. She's doing an excellent job on keeping all the school nurses informed and principals, and leading these when we get this type of COVID outbreak, she's really taking charge and assisting the administration on this. If I sound vague in how I'm talking about this, I am being vague because of FERPA requirements that, I can't tell you how many people are under quarantine. I can't tell you whether it's staff, students, support staff, but I don't think Shaftesbury will be our last school that we have this happen. We are concerned about Thanksgiving recess and travel from staff and students, and then returning to the school. And, but in our new guidance for self-screening, and Laura Boudreau leads a group called, we call it our Continuum of Learning team, our COL team. We meet 3 days a week. It used to be 5, then it went to 4. Now we're down to 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. And this is a core group who are constantly monitoring what the guidance is, and then updating what goes into the Friday newsletters to staff and parents. And the latest that will be coming out is what the newest travel guidance is for families and staff, that that now is included in their self-screening about where they have traveled and what the impact is. Laura, anything you want to add to what I just said on our updated guidance on that? I know
No,
I'm
I
putting
think it,
you on the spot
yeah.
here.
No, I think it's helpful to have these conversations. I was actually thinking about it while we were talking, like, I used to love to teach health when I was in the classroom, and I feel like we're teaching health every day now, all the time, how to wash your hands and arm's length away and wear your mask. The same thing goes with when the guidance comes out. And I feel like just continuing to educate our community through our newsletters, through the school's interactions with families, teachers' interactions with families, sharing here with you. And so the two things you're going to, again, watch for this week are those little subtle updates we make to protocols. And thank you all for hearing this message and then helping us to spread it. That the thing we really want everyone focused on right now is learning more about the travel guidelines. And I encourage you to visit our website, and there's a button for the travel guidelines right under our COVID-19 tab. We tried to make it as easy as possible. And this month, Katie West, our communication coordinator, and Ashley Walker, who's linked and collaborating with the nurses, are coming up with little snippets each week. So it's always on the forefront. So next week, the topic will be, what does it mean to quarantine? And also a reminder about the travel guidelines and the safety protocol. But everyone's been, great about following it. And I know that the check-ins at the schools in the mornings are, we've met with our principals and things are moving smoothly. You'll notice soon that those check-in stations will start, screening stations, you'll notice them to start to move inside at all the schools. So good stuff.
Yeah.
Just one thing, it's nice for the newsletters that you have the clicking buttons. I mean,
Mhm.
especially with this week, the new travel restrictions.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, they get thinking very specific. I
Yes.
mean, can we make sure those are printed out specifically? So there is no, I guess, gray area. Because if somebody doesn't click on it and realize they go to
Yeah. So there's, Jeff, can I ask you a
go
question?
shopping,
Yeah.
we have to
Yeah.
make sure they're
Yes. Thank you, Jeff, for that reminder. So
So they
we,
click and don't go where, Jeff?
like if they go over to Crossgate Malls to go buy clothes. I mean, under the new restriction, that
Yeah.
really could be interpreted, is that essential travel, yes or no? But
Yeah,
realistically,
that was a
yeah,
lengthy
Crossgate-
discussion at an administrators meeting today for both
Yeah.
staff and families about the warnings for that travel and what do we want on, and then what do we
Yeah.
are just inciting more issues. I will let the board know that, some other school districts, and I'm not advocating that we're here at this point, are altering their schedules to go remote. So, between Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'm not an advocate for that. I'm more of an advocate that we need to get as many students into our buildings as possible, or to go the other scenario we're hearing is 2 weeks of remote after Christmas, so that it's a basically a 14-day quarantine issue for everybody. Our concern that if we announce something like that we would just be incentivizing people to then take a longer vacation. And so at this point, we have no plans to announce that we're going to go remote longer than any other period. In fact, we're going to try to accelerate when we're going to get students into the building. And we've set a deadline that we want to be 100% by the Tuesday after Martin Luther King holiday, which is, I keep saying the date wrong, Laura. Is that the 18th? 18th or 19th? 19th. So yeah, the 18th is a Monday. So that is the target that we've sent, that we would do 4 days a week of 100% of our students are in the school. It wouldn't, the AABB model would go away, though we are fully aware that depending on what happens with spikes in COVID testing, that may be altered. But I think we all can agree that we need to get our students back into the buildings at least 4 days a week. But, the news on is there a vaccine available? There was news today, but even with that, the experts seem to be indicating that we're going to be well into 2021 before that would be impactful on how we could populate our schools. So we keep looking at what that date is, but that was the date we arrived on today in our administrative meetings as our target for going 100% of students in the building 4 days a week.
And Jim, can you please just talk a little bit more about the sort of the rationale and the thought process behind how you arrived at that date specifically?
We've been going in 4-week cycles as we roll things out, and that's and it's close to the beginning of the second market period. So that's the date that the COL team, our continuity of learning team, we met this morning, then met with the principals. So that's the date we rolled out with the principals today. The principals seem to be in agreement with that date. It's about a week early for the high school for their date, but we all came to an agreement that's our target. It may have to flex. Laura, feel free to jump in here. As I said, she leads that team.
No, I think that, it's been a 2-week process to use because the state guidance, we're on our 3rd revision of this document. And so it takes us time to unpack it, think about each principal went back with those guidelines and thought about their individual school settings. And then we have key questions that hold us all together, and we come back and collaborate about how to move forward, which also includes, are there financial implications for making moves. So we analyze, especially this particular version of the document is really clear about physical distancing. And so that was helpful for us. Really clear. 3 feet for our younger kids, 6 feet for our older students. And that helped our conversations. And then again, it gave us a place. And again, we've been doing that 4 to 6 week window of kids like structure and routine. So we don't want to go really quickly changing things. So right now, people have just gotten into, a groove, and it's also a interesting time of year where we're hearing a lot about travel restrictions, and there's an uptick in Vermont. And so we want to be really respectful of that. So those were some of the thoughts that went into that. But again, trying to be very collaborative in the decisions we're making using the guidance we've been given.
Thank you.
The other thing I want to address to the board is use of buildings. So I don't know if you saw, but winter sport guidance came down by VPA. The Vermont Principal Association is the organization in Vermont that really has the authority to designate how sports work. They oversee sports. Doesn't really impact the elementary school district, but I want to say this. We've had inquiries about, are your buildings open to the public for, say, recreational sports activities? And the answer is no. If we go by current guidance from the Vermont Department of Health, we can use schools for emergency shelters, food service, SAT testing, formal warned meetings, blood drives, things like that, but not recreational sports. So at this time, we're not allowing the elementary school gymnasiums to be used for recreational activities. It's not just because of the Vermont Department of Public Health guidelines, but also the inability that we feel that we have to clean and disinfect those spaces, and not just the gymnasiums, but bathrooms that may be used after they've been used before our staff and students return the next morning. And that is our priority, the protection of the building for our staff and students so that they may conduct education in those buildings. I realize that that impacts community use group, and there could be people upset with that. So I wanted the board to know that that is the decision at this time, that the buildings are not going to be able to be used, particularly on weekends, because we do not have cleaning crews on the weekends to come in and clean and disinfect, but also at nighttime, unless you are a function of the school. So you all know your own buildings better and what activities might have been going on. But as those groups inquire about using the building, our response has been not at this time. What else can I answer for you this evening? As I'm looking over my notes, I'm getting I'm straying far off.
So, Jim, I was recalling what life looked like before the pandemic. And one of the things
Remember,
that,
Chris?
yeah, one of the things that this board had begun discussing was solar net metering as a way to be more efficient and not only to be more efficient with the use of our tax dollars, but also just to set a good example for our students and moving forward. Obviously, that was put on hold, and it probably will remain on hold for the time being. But do you have, as you're sort of envisioning reopening schools to look more typically like they used to, as we're envisioning moving closer to what we used to call normal, do you anticipate a period of time and we can sort of pick back up those projects that have had to be laid aside in the midst of the pandemic?
I certainly hope so, because you make a really valid point that business still has to go on, life still has to go on, and there are projects and issues that are long term that kind of get pushed aside in a crisis, but they're still there. I know that we've received emails from some vendors on that. I also know that I am taxing Renee and her department because of all dealing with the grant funding requirements. So I don't want to speak for Renee. I know she's here, but I don't believe they've had anything to do with any time to deal with the RFP on solar. But I know that's a priority for this board, and I'm sure it's on Renee's list that when she ever can catch her breath. But remember, she did indicate that we need to hire someone to write that RFP. It's not something that neither Renee or I have skills on, that we would feel that we were qualified to do due diligence for this school district to write that. Am I correct, Renee?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the focus is definitely shifted to building safety, disinfecting, ventilation projects. And then, of course, now we're entering into budget season. But before that, I've got multiple grant applications that we've been working on and revising.
We can buy Chromebooks and whether we can buy iPads and get reimbursed for them. We've been so reluctant to spend some money, and then the districts are on the hook for it. I think we got some great answers in the past few days on that, but point well taken, Chris, that we'll make sure that it doesn't, and keep reminding us so that it doesn't slide into the pit of forgotten work that it needs to, so like MSK Engineering is doing the bulk of the work for an MAU project for us right now. Perhaps after they're done for that, we could reach out to them and see if they don't feel they're qualified for writing an RFP for a solar project, maybe they could recommend Renee someone who could.
I'm sure that Jay would be willing to offer a hand in guiding us as to who would be qualified to be able to do that.
So
Sure.
I appreciate the reminder, and Renee and I are both making notes right now that in our next conversation with MSK Engineering, we'll see what they can do for that. Because we remember, just a reminder, we didn't want a company that has a financial gain in selling us a solar project be the one to write the specs or RFP for that.
Yep, yeah, for good reason, for sure. And yeah, and my request was in no way to diminish all of the amazing work that everyone continues to be doing. But as you say, there's,
yeah, we have to keep our eye on the big picture as we go there. And I welcome reminders. I'm not bothered or insulted by them at all. So I appreciate that, because there's a lot of balls up in the air right now.
Any other questions for our superintendent or other central office staff members who are here? Okay, so we'll move on to the next agenda item. Thank you very much to Jim and Laura and Renee. The next agenda item is policies. The policy committee still has not been meeting, so there's nothing to report out there.
They are going to meet. We have a December date ready for the policy committee to meet, right, Laura? Yeah.
Great. Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. So moving on to the chair's report, two quick things. One, we just wanted to clarify and make it official that Jeff is going to be the representative from the SVU ESD on the ESP negotiation team. So thank you, Jeff, for doing that. And now I'm going to turn the floor over to Dick, who's just going to lead us through a very quick discussion of the VSBA resolution recommendation. So Dick, the floor is yours, please.
Yeah, I just wanted, in case everybody doesn't really tie in and read all the emails from VSBA, I attended a meeting on October 29th, and there were some 9 resolutions that had to do with a variety of things that affect students in our schools. One might be even pertinent now with the Mount Anthony situation, but this resolution was passed wherein the school board could remove an officer during his or her tenure. Other ones, the push, the main goal should be broadband access throughout Vermont, because we're suffering from lack of that in many areas. Hold harmless student education during a state of emergency. That kind of means we aren't going to hold them responsible for not meeting all the goals that their standard education program would indicate. Governance and career technical education piece. They wish to have a vote to approve that all school districts, whether they host a technical education center or not, would have input on how it operates and its budget. That was defeated. We also defeated a motion that would allow us to handle yet more work to our superintendent. We didn't feel the superintendent's office needed any more than they already have. So we didn't want to do that. There were motions that addressed emotional wellness, anti-racism, and the ability of a student to remain in a school district to finish out his or her education rather than have to move once the parents moved during this part of the coronavirus issue. And the last thing was that we wanted to call on the feds and the state to actually honor their stated support financially and in other ways for student education, regardless of a pandemic in place. And that's all I wanted to say about that. Hopefully that gives people an idea about what the VSBA is doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. And can you say more about the removal of school officers during their tenure?
Well, there is, I think it's Title 16. Yeah, Title 16, the education statute sort of indicate, it doesn't address whether or not a board can remove an officer during their tenure. So in many places, it's a tenure for a year's duty as a chair or finance something. And the question came about because of, I don't remember the district where they're having a problem, but the officer doesn't represent the board efficiently and honestly as they believe should be. And so they challenged the statute, and the statute doesn't really address whether they can remove an officer for not representing the board efficiently or honestly. And that was approved to ask the state to change that title so the board could do that.
Well, I'm thinking about more close to home. I know the CDC, for instance, has in its bylaws, they have provisions spelled out whereby they can remove a sitting CDC board member, despite the fact that CDC board members are elected positions. It exists within their bylaws, and I don't know if they've ever had to exercise that or if it's ever been challenged. But you know, and again, thinking about recent events closer to home, you know, there have probably been some situations where maybe that could be useful. Yeah, Superintendent Culkeen, please.
So we'll tell you that at next week's MAU meeting, Dina Atwood, SVSU attorney, will be on the agenda. And she's going to be addressing to the board, as the chair and I requested, what would be the process for them changing their charter to allow for the removal of a board member? And that there's no reason why she couldn't. She's also your attorney. So whatever she tells that board, we could invite her, if you wish, to come to your next board meeting and outline the process, or join in and listen to the MAU meeting, either or both, about what is the process to change your charter to allow for the removal of a board member. And it's similar to our understanding is, say in Bennington, it is in the charter for the select board that they can remember. They don't vote to remove a member. There's a process in the charter that would allow a petition from the electorate, the same person that put the person in office, to recall somebody, but it's a super majority in my understanding for the, which is basically 75% of the voters to recall somebody. So it's a difficult hurdle to achieve. So she's going to be addressing that next Wednesday night at the MAU meeting, but I'm sure she'd welcome to come back to your next board meeting and present it to this board.
Great. Well, thank you.
Like our officers.
I like our officers. Our officers are great. It's not our officers I'm worried about. So, okay. So that, again, that exhausts the chair's report for what it was. So that brings us to the last agenda item, which is the FYI. I draw your attention to the budget status reports and to the SVSU student enrollment, which are on the website. And if there are no questions about those, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting of the SVU-ESD.
I have one question, Chris.
Sure, Jeff.
You know, for my job, I travel a lot, so in the car. And just to point out, I'm not sure if it applies to us as a district, but last month, American Public Media had a story about Lucy Calkins and the reading program she put out, and how, you know, really is, you know, what she's been teaching for years is disproven theory and how you would teach kids how to read. So, I mean, I guess what I'm asking for as a parent is, you know, or as a board member is, you know, is this a program that we're currently using in our district? Or specifically, what programs are we using and how effective are they? You know, this is a pretty big story they've been working on for the last year at American Public Media. So, you know, maybe we should look into how our kids really are reading, because it's been a big story in the state last year and with American Public Media. So I think we should probably look into, you know, what we're using and are these effective programs.
I think it's totally appropriate for this board to get updated on the different modes of curriculum that are used. And again, it's something that we've gotten away from a little bit in the last few months, but I think it's not just limited to literacy, but I think that's legitimate ground at any point.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe what we can begin doing as things hopefully are getting settled down with some flexibility built in is to have opportunities for that to be presented by different central office staff, so we can understand what exactly the curriculum looks like in our schools. Cool. Okay. So if there's any other discussion on that, Dick, I thought I saw your hand for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
I'll
If
second.
you could
Second.
second that. Yes, I told you Cindy would second that. Of course, she's
Yeah.
right there on top of it. So we have first and a second. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good. The motion passes. So thank you very much. We're adjourned.